Hello. Welcome to this seminar on how to build your resilience in the face of change. I'm Felicity Dwyer. I'm a leadership trainer, a communication skill trainer and a coach specialising in helping people transition through career change or change into a new position at work. I'm hoping that this seminar will give you lots of practical tips and ideas to help you feel more resilient in coping with the changes that may come to you over the next few weeks, months or years. Our agenda today, we're going to start by looking at you and what are your reactions in the face of change. I think whenever we're thinking about a situation we're having to face, taking a little bit of time to reflect on ourselves is always helpful and valuable. We'll look a little bit at the relationship between stress and resilience and why resilience can help you in potentially stressful situations. We'll look at what's within your control in the face of change, where it's really worth putting your energy and your time. And then we'll move on to look at some practical techniques to help you cope and indeed thrive in uncertain times. And the seminar will end with a practical exercise that will help you bring everything together and make a plan for coping with change going forward. So, let's start with an exercise. For this, I invite you to think about a change or a couple of changes that perhaps you've been through in the past or even that you're experiencing now. And just think about what were your thoughts and feelings. You may wish to think about both positive and negative aspects of the change. In reality, change is not usually all good or all bad, and even just recognising that there's a mix of different feelings and thoughts and can be quite helpful in looking at change and getting perhaps a little bit of distance from change when you're in it. So I do invite you to pause the video now and just take a couple of minutes to think about a change that I went through. What was I feeling at the time? What was I thinking? Did that change as I went through the process? And when you've taken a couple of minutes, rejoin the video. So what did you come up with? Often doing exercise like this, people will come up with a range of different emotions. For example, uncertainty, fear, anger, maybe curiosity, excitement, potential, maybe the need to make decisions, maybe a sense of overwhelm, or even a sense of space, that you've got time to consider something new. So a range of emotions will come up during the process of change. And something else you might like to think about, and we'll pick up on as we go through the seminar. Is there a difference between a change that you've decided to make and one that feels as if it's been imposed, that it comes from outside? Sometimes that can affect how you feel, sometimes not. Sometimes even if it's a longed for change, you can still suddenly be hit with the uncertainty and the strangeness of it all. So, this isn't a stress management course, but because stress and resilience are linked, I want to start by just taking a moment or two to think about stress before we move on to thinking about resilience. This is one definition of stress from the Mental Health Foundation. One thing that you might find is there isn't actually any single definition of stress. Stress can be a word we use to describe being overloaded with things coming at us, or it can be used to describe how we're struggling to respond to something. But I think we all know what we mean when we say we're stressed or that's a stressful situation. If you do get to the stage where you feel overwhelmed by stress, there's some really good resources on the Mental Health Foundation website, and also on Mind's website, amongst others. And I've included a resource in the handouts for this course of useful places to go. Now, stress in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, if we mean by that a bit of external pressure or even a bit of internal pressure that we're putting on ourselves. Let me explain. So this curve sometimes describes the relationship between stress and performance. So actually, if we have no stress, if we have no pressure, if we're not actually required to meet any deadlines at all or get up and do anything, then actually that can lead to a sense of boredom. As human beings, we are meant to go out and do things. You know, we are an active, we're a curious species, really. So we need a little bit of stress and pressure. And when we can cope with it, when we feel physically, when we feel emotionally able to deal with a little bit of stress and pressure, then we're likely to perform quite well. And there is a sort of optimum state at which we feel that we can focus at work, we feel motivated because we're stretching ourselves, we feel we're being required to think creatively, but we're just not feeling overwhelmed by it. And that's really what we're aiming for. So if you're a manager, obviously you want to ensure that your staff are in this kind of eustress zone. If you're a member of staff, then, you know, keep an eye on where you're at. You know, have you got a healthy level of stress? You know, do you actually need to ask for a bit more work and challenge? Or do you need to actually level off a bit, or maybe find a way to manage your time more effectively? So, you know, trying to stay in that zone is a positive thing. But of course, what tends to happen when things get busy and when we have particularly a lot of changes going on, a lot of changes perhaps going on at once, then we can start to feel overloaded. There's too much external pressure, or internally we feel we can't cope so well. Our body gets into that famous fight or flight response. So we're acting as if everything's an emergency, and you know, if that goes on for too long, then we can potentially even burn out. And that's when you'll start to feel like continual negative emotions. You might feel a lot of anxiety. You might feel, you know, quite angry and distressed quite a lot of the time. And of course, if you get to that point where you think you're seriously overloaded or headed towards burnout, please do go and get help. There's plenty of help out there. And this course isn't about coping when you get to that stage. What this seminar and course is about is helping you to build your resilience so you're less likely to get overloaded and you can manage the pressures of change just a little bit more easily. This is a quote I like from Rick Hanson, who's a meditation and mindfulness teacher. The reason why the brain is Velcro for negative experience and Teflon for positive ones is evolutionary, really. You know, the cave woman who strolled along, not a care in the world, oh, what's that lovely stripy creature out there, was very quickly eaten by the tiger. So we're naturally you know, biologically geared up to look for threats, to look for things that might be, you know, might be a danger to us. And we react to change. If you've ever seen a cat playing with a mouse, if the mouse is really still, not moving at all, the cat will just sit there. As soon as the mouse starts to move, the cat becomes alert and it chases it. So, you know, any sort of movement or change or something new triggers our brain. And again, this can be a positive thing. A bit of variety is really, really healthy. But if we get too much, then we get those overloaded states again. So, on to resilience. A couple of definitions for you to read. Resilience is often thought about the ability to bounce back from external stresses or pressures, or to respond to change in a way that allows us to adjust or to deal with it without becoming overwhelmed. If you think perhaps of a rubber band that's stretched and returns to its original shape, that's resilience. But if we stretch it too far, however strong the band, it will eventually snap. So however resilient you are, there will come a point where, you may be overloaded still. And to take that analogy a step further, if your rubber band has been left outside, if it started to perish or rot, becomes fragile, then even a little bit of a stretch might break the band. So we're just trying to increase our stretchiness, if you like. A concept that can be really useful here is this idea of the circle of influence, circle of concern. And this comes originally from the wonderful book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And the idea is that the circle of concern is everything in our world that concerns us in some way or has some kind of impact on us. So you could start, for example, to think quite widely about the things that concern us. So things like government policy, things like the climate situation, things like the environment, not only in the big climate change perspective, but also things happening in our community, in our neighbourhood. Obviously, in a work situation, this will be things like, what's happening at a senior level in the organisation, what decisions are being made, is the restructuring going on? What about the effect of government policy or education funding? Is this going to impact us? Will we be healthy next year? Will our children be okay? So all these things can really be of concern to us. But of course, if we spend all our time worrying about these, we will very quickly get overwhelmed. Within our circle of concern, there's something that Covey calls a circle of influence. And these are things that we can influence or have an effect on. So, for example, we may not be able to have any influence on the strategic direction of an organisation, but we may be able to influence things that happen within our own team, through our own behaviour, through our own ideas. We may not be able to affect some of the wider things affecting our children, but we can provide a loving home environment for them and do our best to support them and get them ready to go out in the world. We may not be able to affect what happens to our health in the long term, but we can certainly take decisions that will support our physical and mental health. So this is when you come to the central zone, which is often called the circle of control. So these are the things we can actually do. And when we're getting worried about things going on, actually narrowing our focus a little to our circle of control, to what can I actually do, can be really helpful for a number of reasons. Firstly, it just gives us a sense of control. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes when we're experiencing a lot of change, it's more stressful when we feel we've got no control over it. But we do have control about something. We have control about how we react. We have control about how we behave. So by keeping our focus in that circle of control, we can both reduce the stress a little bit, but also feel we're doing something positive. So if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, I would say just come back and think, okay, what can I do next? What's the best use of my time right now? What can I actually do? What's within my control and what isn't? And really just focus on what you can control. The next part of this course, I just want to share a few ideas that will help you, I think, to stay in that focus of what you can control and to actually help build your resilience. This isn't a sort of course with lots of academic citations, it's a practical course, but all the ideas I'm going to share are evidence-based. First one, I have our little squirrel here. And if you've ever watched a squirrel, what's lovely about a squirrel is they are so present in the moment, they're so alert, they're looking at what's going on, and of course, animals are. And I've used this as a metaphor for that sense of being present in the moment. Now, our minds are wonderful things. We can travel into the future and see what might happen tomorrow or next week. We can go into the past and think what happened yesterday or last year or 10 years ago. And sometimes that's really helpful. It's helpful to reflect and learn From the past, it's helpful to look back on happy times. It's helpful to plan for the future. But there's a downside as well to allowing our minds to drift all over the place in time. Anxiety tends to be when we're thinking about the future in a fearful way, and things like regret can happen when we think about the past, in a way of wishing things were different, which is not within our control. So I think one of the most helpful things you can do in dealing with stressful situations is sometimes just bring yourself right to the present moment. And I'm just going to invite you to take a moment now, if you're willing, and just do a little centering, grounding exercise to help you do that. So I invite you, if you're willing, to sit down with your feet on the floor, maybe your back straight. Maybe imagine a little golden thread coming out of the top of your head, just gently lifting your head. And just bring a little bit of attention into your jaw. We often hold tension in our jaw, so just relax your jaw a little bit. And then maybe just bring your attention to your shoulders and just feel your shoulders relaxing a little bit. And then just allow your attention to move down and feel the chair underneath you. Feel the chair supporting your weight. And then maybe just let your attention flow down your legs for a moment. Down through your knees, lower legs, ankles, and into your feet. And just gently feel your feet on the floor. Just feel that sense of connection with the floor, with the ground, with the earth. The ground is just holding you and supporting you. And for many years, whenever I've had to go into a stressful situation or conversation, I often take a moment just to feel my feet connected to the floor, just to bring my energy and attention down. And once you've got that sense of connection with the floor, you may also want to just feel yourself opening up, that you can, the feeling is that you can be grounded and centred, but you can also be open and alert to what's happening outside you. There are lots of fantastic meditations and visualizations. You can find things like the Headspace app. You can find them on Spotify. You can find free meditations online. I'll include a couple in your resource pack. And just taking a little bit of time to practice some grounding, centering exercises every day will really help you to stay grounded and centered when you really need it. Another technique that can be really useful to calm you down and can be used quite quickly to help in a stressful situation, I've called 5-8 breathing. Essentially, the technique is to breathe in and breathe out, and for your out breath to be a little longer than your in breath. This calms the vagus nerve, and it does help to bring you into a calm state quite quickly. It's one that you can practice during the day, but then if you found yourself in a stressful situation, again, you can do this, 3 or 4 times, and it just helps to calm you down. It's a really lovely technique. It's one of my go-to techniques if I'm feeling under pressure. So again, I'll invite you to just do a couple of rounds with me now. One thing I would say with any breathing technique, if at any point during your breathing technique you feel a bit lightheaded, then just breathe normally. So hopefully that won't happen, but I always just say that. But really it's just to take a moment. Breathe in gently for the count of 5 and out for the count of 8. Now it's your time. You're counting your time, and it doesn't have to be 5-8. It could be a different count, could be 4-6. It's just a breath that feels comfortable to you. And when you're breathing well, ideally you're breathing from your diaphragm. So your stomach is going in to breathe out, and then it's relaxing to breathe in and to pour the air into the lower part of your lungs. So if you find yourself breathing in a shallow way and your shoulders going up and down, that can actually add to a feeling of stress. So again, taking a slightly slower breath and a slightly deeper breath and a slightly longer out breath can just help you to calm down a little if you're faced with a stressful situation. I just find that's a really lovely, useful technique to have. The next tool I'm going to give you or suggest is gratitude. I've used this tool a few years ago. I was going through a little bit of a difficult situation, and a tool that I did was every night before going to bed was write down 3 things I've been grateful for that day. You know, they could be just small things. They could just be, 5 minutes outside, or seeing the leaves falling, or just a coffee with a friend, or just a moment reading a book, or, a lovely cup of tea. So just small things, and you want to look for different things and just write them down. Or even better, when you write them down, just feel that sense of gratitude. So I invite you to do this now if you can. Just think of something that happened maybe earlier today, just something small that you were grateful for. I'm doing this exercise now, and I'm thinking I caught the sunrise this morning out of my window, and it was beautiful colours. And I just want to feel what it feels to be grateful for that. Now, you may be thinking, oh my goodness, this is a load of rubbish. This exercise, actually, there is quite a lot of science behind it, because you're learning in your brain to make connections to positive things. And I've often offered this to coaching clients who are struggling to find it difficult to see things to be happy about. And I've had people come back and say, oh, well, I was cynical about this exercise, and then I tried it, and actually it has made a difference. So even if you're a bit cynical about this exercise, I do encourage you to try it, to give it a go. Okay, food. Now, this is very important for resilience, because we are what we eat, quite literally, and the reality is that the food we eat may have an effect on our mood, on our health. Now, I'm not going to give you a lecture on healthy eating. It's not what this course is about, but I am going to ask you to notice something. Notice, how do different foods affect you? What happens if you eat a lot of fruit and veg one day? What happens if you eat brown rice instead of white rice? Just notice. I did an exercise. It was a January giving up chocolate month. Now, I love chocolate, and I haven't given it up for good. But during that month of giving up chocolate, for example, I observed that my energy levels stayed more stable throughout the day. So although I've gone back to eating chocolate, I am trying to be a bit more disciplined about it and only have it in the evenings, because I did actually notice a difference. So some of these can be quite subtle, but it's rather than saying I should eat this kind of food, it's about experimenting, trying what suits you. Does it suit you actually to have a bigger breakfast and a smaller evening meal? Does it make a difference if you eat earlier or later in the evening? So just have a try and see how different foods affect you. Exercise. This is a similar one. We all know exercise is good for us. However, if you find yourself saying, I should go to the gym, then I would say, is there another sort of exercise that you could do that would be more fun than going to a gym? For me, it's dance. And even in lockdown, I put some music on. I try and start each day with 10 minutes of dance. That makes me feel good. For many people, it's going out for a walk. Some people get a dog just so they go out for a walk, but you don't need a dog. So for some people, that being in nature is so important. You may love the gym. You may get a real sense of a buzz from going to the gym, at least when gyms are open. But it's really about finding a sort of exercise that you enjoy and that you'll want to do regularly. Still need to get in the habit of doing it, but if it's something you enjoy, it will be a lot easier than forcing yourself to do something. So what do you enjoy doing for exercise? And also, practically, what will fit into your lifestyle? What will you actually be able to do during the working day? Can you take a 10-minute walk at lunchtime? Can you do a little bit of movement before the day starts? So think about what you could fit in during the day. And even if you're at your desk, just getting up and doing a couple of minutes stretching, that will make a difference. That will get the blood flowing into your muscles and your extremities. So do try and build in, even if they're mini exercise breaks during the day, it will make a difference to how you feel. Sleep. Really important. And again, I'm not going to offer you lots of advice about sleep. I'm going to ask you to observe what makes a difference for you when you're settling down to sleep. For me, for example, I've noticed that using a screen too late in the evening, whether that's watching television or whether that's using my iPad, affects my sleep. Caffeine affects my sleep if I have it late in the day. I've noticed that I'm better not drinking coffee in the afternoon and stopping caffeine completely after 4 o'clock. Sleep experts often recommend that you have a regular routine at bedtime, that you go to bed at a similar time, that you have it's almost like a ritual that you get used to doing at the end of the day, which sends a signal to your brain and body that it's time to sleep. Doing a little bit of meditation or a grounding exercise can help. If you find that you're lying in bed and your mind is racing, then if necessary, get up, write down what's on your mind, get it out of your head and onto paper so you don't need to worry about it, and then go back to bed. I find that's a simple exercise that can help. You don't have to get out of bed if you can. If you're not going to wake anyone up, you can just write it down when you're in bed. But it's about that getting it out of your head. It's almost like your brain is going over something so you don't forget it. And once you've got it written down, then it's a lot easier to let it go. So have a think about what helps you sleep. Notice what makes a difference. Alcohol at night can affect your sleep, for example. So just see what affects you for good or ill. Good relationships are really important. And I'm coming back here to this idea of the circle of control and what's in your control with a relationship. We can never control another person or how they react to something, nor should we. But we can control our own behaviour towards someone. We can reach out to a friend, we can listen to what's on their mind, we can share what's on ours. At work, we can do our best to create good, strong working relationships with our colleagues. Now, a good working relationship is not one where you never disagree or never have any conflict. It's one where you feel you can be honest and you're willing to listen to what they have to say and for them to be honest too. Relationships are really important. Now, I could say a lot about this, it would be a separate course, but I would say think about firstly who's in your life at the moment. Could you reach out to existing friends or family a little more than you currently do? Who's a really good person to talk things through with? You have some friends that are good for activities and doing things, and other friends that are good for just having a really good conversation, even if that's via Zoom or via phone. So think about who's the right person to reach out with, discuss changes. If you have any concerns at work, speak to your manager. Their job is to support you. Speak to the pastoral services, HR services that are available at work if you need that. Reach out, speak to a counsellor if you need a bit of support. Just really reach out to people when you need to. I think the other thing to say about relationships is if you're in a situation where a lot of people are experiencing change and stress, you may get some stuff coming at you from other people which triggers you or encourages you to feel defensive, or they're getting at me. Chances are it's not really about you, it's because they're stressed as well. So again, even something that starts off with a potentially a little bit of conflict could be an opportunity to have a deep, worthwhile conversation. So tend your relationships well, like the, precious flowers they are. Acceptance. A lot of energy and distress can come when we're trying to resist what is. If a change is coming and we don't like it, and we try and resist and we try and pretend it's not happening, or we try and pretend we're okay about it when we're really not, that can actually use up quite a lot of energy and be quite stressful in itself. So I think something that can be really helpful is to just be willing to accept that, yes, this change is happening and actually I feel angry about it or I feel scared. But this technique, which I call yes and, is about not letting that acceptance or that negative emotion take over your whole being. So it's, yes, I'm angry that this change has happened and I don't feel it was my fault. And I appreciate the support of my family, and I appreciate the fact that the sun is shining. So you can allow that real feeling to be there, but it not to fill your whole mind, if that makes sense. So I think that accepting and then opening up is really, really helpful technique. It's from an approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a kind of cognitive behavioural approach. So I will go back and say, if you really are overwhelmed and not coping, please get professional help. If you just need a tool that might help you get a little bit more distance and perspective, I just find this yes and really helpful. So yes and, I'm scared, I've lost my job, and I'm happy that my child's doing well at school, and our cat's just brought in another mouse, whatever it might be. It's really just putting it in perspective, but not denying it, not pushing it down. This is just a little a little method from a mindfulness teacher called Tara Brach. You can find her online. She's quite a well-known teacher. She's given some talks on YouTube. She's got a lovely, gentle way with her. And this rain is, recognising feelings that are coming our way, acknowledging them and accepting them. So inviting that little bit of curiosity and inquiry around them, and not being attached. There's an idea about not being attached to an outcome. So if you go into a conversation, for example, you are clear about what you want to say, you show up in the conversation, but actually, if you're trying to control the outcome of a situation, then that's liable to lead to resistance and stress. So just holding things a little bit lightly can be really, really helpful. And as I said, there's quite a lot of resources provided by Tara that could be helpful if that appeals to you. And finally, but so importantly, be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to other people. Kindness is, it's just something that we forget to do sometimes. Or we're kind to other people or our children or our pets, but we're not kind to ourselves. So if you find yourself again saying things like, oh, I should be coping with this better, or, other people are doing this and I'm not, if you feel you're not being kind to yourself, just take a moment and think, what would I say to a friend who was feeling like this? A friend who was saying, I find, I'm not happy with something, we'd probably listen to them. We'd probably encourage them maybe to to express how they were feeling, but then think could there be some positive aspects to the situation? We certainly wouldn't blame them. So be kind to yourself, and be kind to others. There is some interesting research as well around, acts of kindness or just being kind to others helps us feel better. It's like volunteering to help others can help us too. So it's that reciprocation, being kind to ourselves, being kind to others, but also being kind helps us feel better. So that's a bit of a win-win in my view. So a few ideas there. And you've probably got your own ideas as well about things that have helped you in the past or could help you to become more resilient. So I'm going to move on now to a practical exercise that I hope will help you, and there's a handout on this as well. This is the 4S Resilience Plan from positivepsychology.com. And this exercise helps you draw on experiences, knowledge, understanding, skills from your past to help you deal with current or future challenges and changes. It looks in 4 areas. The first is support. So this is about relationship, it's about people, it's about who can you turn to help you through a change or a difficult situation. What about strategies? So what things have helped you? Is it going out for a walk to clear your head? Is it something like a gratitude journal? Is it having a massage? Is it dancing? Things that can really help you to move through difficult times. Sagacity is about wisdom. So this is really about what wisdom can you draw on, what philosophies can help you, just because when we're going through difficult times, taking that slightly bigger picture can really help. Now, obviously, if you've got some kind of religious faith, this might be really helpful here. If you don't have any religious faith, things like just remembering this is part of the ups and downs of life, that change is part of life, can be helpful. I love the line from D.H. Lawrence, "The breath of life and the sharp winds of change are the same thing." That line has helped me through some of the sharp winds in my life. We're famously told, "This too shall pass." So some of those things can just give a little bit of perspective on a situation. And solution seeking. So this is actually what did you do? What actually did you do to get you through a situation? Did you ask others for help? Did you come up with a written plan? Did you do a step-by-step? Did you speak to a manager about organising your work? What actually did you do? There's the exercise. So again, I invite you to do this now rather than later. So recalling an example of resilience. So a time you overcame a challenge or a setback. And you might want a work-related one. It might not be work-related. It depends on what seems relevant. And who helped you? How did you cope with difficult thoughts and feelings? What strategies helped you to stay together? What insights or inspiration gave you comfort or hope? And what did you do to deal with the problem? So write down a few ideas for each of these. And of course, when you're thinking about ideas here, you could also think of suggestions from the seminar. Was there an idea there that you think, I'd like to try that? And which of these resources can you draw on now to help with the change you're facing? What will you do first? We're now coming to the end of this seminar on resilience in the face of change. We've thought a little bit about the different reactions to change, both positive and more negative. We've thought a little bit about the relationship between stress and resilience, and that actually building up your physical and emotional resilience can help you deal with the pressures that might be brought about through changes at work or in your life. And we've thought a little bit how your experiences in the past can be brought through into the present and future to help you manage change better. I would say now, just take a moment to connect with your feet again, come back to the present, and I hope you've enjoyed this seminar and found something useful. Thank you very much.